Hey, it's Eva.
Hey, it's Kristen. Let's start over. Okay.
I was just like looking at this, like, I really have to read that.
I know.
Hey, it's Eva.
Hey, it's Kristen.
Hi.
Hey, girl. Okay.
All right, come on. Hey, it's Eva.
Hey, it's Kristen.
Before we kick off the final episode of Natasha's season, we have some updates to share. First, I want to thank our listener, Susan, for emailing me this week to ask why we didn't release an episode on schedule last week. And to be honest, Susan, this is the first time we've ever heard that anyone even missed us when we're not on schedule. And I want to thank you for that. So we promise in the future to at least update everyone if we're going to miss a week.
We also want to thank Natasha for giving her time, her vulnerability, and sharing her story through all the ups and downs and everything in between of this shitty disease. A huge thank you to everyone in our production team, our story editor, Mary Ellen, engineer Daniel, and writer Hannah, and all the contributors who have made it possible to finish another great season. We've had some amazing guests too.
For the next few months, Kristen and I will be back to do some special episodes that we've had on our bucket list for a while, including a long awaited Kristen update. So to stay in touch with what we're doing, the newsletter is the best place to get real-time updates. And you can find the link for that in the show notes.
Everything that we do is in the show notes.
It's always in the show notes. It's there.
It is, promise. If you have chemo brain, if you have chemo hand, just look in the show notes. We'll be on a short break, but we want to hear from you regarding what we do next. There's a poll in our recent newsletter issue, so please vote and subscribe while you're there. Or just email us and tell us what's on your mind.
If you've just been diagnosed and are interested in telling your story from beginning to end on our podcast, send us a note on our website at breastcancerstoriespodcast.com.
And lastly, if you want to support the show, you can donate directly on the website through PayPal or become a premium subscriber of our newsletter. All the links are in the show notes, like we said before. Your support is crucial to continuing our mission, which is simply to help you and the people who love you through the shock of diagnosis and treatment. I'm Kristen Vengler, and our mission with this podcast is to help you and the people who love you through the shock of diagnosis and treatment.
I'm Eva Shea, and the incredible woman whose story you're about to hear is a nurse practitioner in San Francisco who has dedicated her life to caring for patients more vulnerable than you can imagine.
Her name is Natasha. This is a story about what happens when you have breast cancer, told in real time.
You look so good.
I feel I've gained some weight back.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Okay. Our goal was a pound a week. How are you doing?
I forget how long ago that was, but I just tipped over to 110, which is good. I mean, I have a ways to go, but that's good.
That's good, right? Because you were down to 102.
Yeah.
Have you just been eating the world?
No, really. I'm just eating like a regular human being. I made a delicious dinner. I have this fabulous cookbook. This is my new thing. I'm going to send it to you as a gift. It's called the Ultimate Cooking for One Cookbook because I hate cooking for myself. And this is just like everything is just cooking for one person. It's really good. And it's like a 20-minute, like maximum 30-minute screwing around with food. But no, I made this thing with like bacon and shrimp and cream and, it was good. It's not a Weight Watchers book. Let's put it that way. It was funny. Just before you and I were scheduled to talk tonight, I was talking to a friend on the phone and I was like, oh, I have to go. I'm, wrapping up the podcast. I said, I'm really not sure what's on my mind. Like, I'm not sure what to talk about. And she's like, well, aren't you still getting treatment? I was like, well, yeah, I go in tomorrow. And she said, well, how about trying to explain to people why you're still getting treatment, even though you've been told that you're cancer-free?
Right.
And I can remember, a couple of months ago when I'd got the you're cancer-free and every 3 weeks you're still going to go in for treatment idea. Like, I'm not really sure what to call it. And I call it chemo because that's sort of what I associate it with.
Right. Right.
It's still 2 drugs. I still have to have, my port gets accessed. And
right.
I've tried to be this sort of, I don't know, stoic Brit with the port. I've never used the lidocaine cream. They just, I don't know, because it hurts for less than a second.
Oh, it hurts though.
But actually, it was interesting. Last time it hurt almost through the infusion. And afterwards, they said, yeah, oh no, it looks a little bit red this time. Let us know if something happens. Like, let us know if something happens. Like, how about, you're the poor people. Like, why don't you
do something?
Do something. And it was fine. But I've been counting down. I have 5 more treatments.
Okay.
And I have a weird collection of odd symptoms that I hadn't put together or related to the 2 hormone blockers until there's a really good app that a lot of medics use called Hippocrates that is sort of the Bible for drugs and side effects and adverse reactions. And so many of these things are an adverse reaction, like a side effect to the hormone therapy. For example, I feel like I'm getting some neuropathy in my feet.
Oh, no.
I know. I don't notice it in the daytime, but when I go to bed at night, that's when I've been noticing it. It's sort of, it's been bizarrely cold for San Francisco the last week or so. So there was a little bit of me of like, wow, why are my feet so cold? And then I was sort of doing a body scan in bed at night. And I was like, no, that's like a kind of a warm, burny, tingly weirdness. It's not bad.
Right.
I've also had this strange arrhythmia, we call it, like a sort of an irregular heartbeat. Doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, I don't know if you've ever had it, even temporarily. It's like a kind of like a bit of a shock in the chest.
Right.
And then like you almost feel the thud when it's either a premature heartbeat or a late heartbeat.
Okay.
And then there was something else. Oh, my taste buds are still completely jacked up.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, they're mostly benign. After chemo being so terrible, where you have the chronic nausea and the like bone breaking fatigue, I don't have that. I'm back at work. I'm eating normally, but it's just realizing this sort of constellation of side effects that I hadn't quite put together. And then, looking up on Hippocrates, what are the side effects from these 2 hormone blockers? Like, aha, here we go. And there's no such thing as a free lunch. You don't block your hormones without side effects. And I'm due a mammogram in January. And, I was talking to my sister today that she was on hormone replacement therapy, and I've managed to get her off it because my mom and I both, my mom had she had a DCIS, so she was lucky. But, just talking to my sisters, like, we don't need to medicalize menopause. You've got hot flushes. You'll be fine.
Right.
And to put a caveat around that, like some people who are listening may be really, really struggling. I was lucky enough that I didn't struggle from menopause. But do this mammogram, it's like my boob is still really tender from the surgery. I don't want it squished in their machine.
No. Maybe they can do an ultrasound on that one instead.
That's a great idea because I just think it's going to hurt. And I've never been one of those who think mammograms have really hurt me in the past, but this time I know it's going to.
Right. Well, because the scar tissue is still like settling.
Yeah.
How long ago was it? 5 months max?
Right. And it's still, even the look of the boob is settling. Initially, when I looked in the mirror, it was definitely concave and sort of deformed looking. And over the months, it's sort of like, it's settled down. Fat's moved into where the concave bits were. And it's still a little funky looking, but not as much so. But yeah, I do not want it squished between 2 plates of plastic.
Oh, no. Because it's probably still a little sore if you put a bra on, like in that spot, right?
Yeah, just about a month ago, I started wearing my regular underwire bras again, and they really are not comfortable. So I've gone back to not the post-surgical bra, but just a much lighter. It's fine. I don't care. But yeah, the wires were really digging in.
Yeah.
And because I've lost weight as well, they were digging in my ribs. It's like, this is not good.
No. And I think it'd be good to talk about what the reason is for this year-long thing, because we've hit on it a little bit, I think, a couple times in the podcast, but with the receptors, mine is estrogen positive. And so my endocrine therapy is taking a little pill And it's a hormone blocker because the idea is to keep all of the estrogen out of my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'm sure there's a protocol similar for progesterone positive, right? And then yours is HER2 positive, but not estrogen and not progesterone.
Exactly.
So why don't you explain a little bit about that?
So I think of it a little bit like Pac-Man, which definitely shows my age, but I think of the tumor is any of the cancerous cells that may still be there are desperately going around the body looking for HER2 because that's what they like to eat and that's what keeps them alive. So what the two drugs that I get, one is called Herceptin and the other one is called Perjeta, and they block the body's production of this hormone so that the Pac-Man tumor is sort of looking everywhere. And actually never really played Pac-Man, but I've seen it.
Oh, I was a beast, girl.
So my hope is that those little hungry mouths they're just dying off because there's nothing for them to eat.
Right.
So in a way, I feel lucky, if I'm allowed to say that there's not really a downside to blocking HER2. Whereas I know, and you can speak to this, Kristen, like women who have to be on tamoxifen, it can be a challenge. And we know that the women who are prescribed it, not many women manage the 5 or 10 years.
Right. And so it was explained to me that tamoxifen is for premenopausal and that the AIs or aromatase inhibitors, and I don't know if tamoxifen is one or not, but I got the impression that those are postmenopausal. And so the one that I take is Arimidex.
Okay.
And it's true. I have to say that I know I have some of the effects there, but it's not nearly as bad as what a lot of women get. A lot of women get some seriously debilitating emotional issues, cognitive issues. The bone pain isn't great. I have that. I know I have some cognitive issues too still. I don't think of things as quickly and I can't get words to come to me. I don't know if that's leftover chemo brain, or.
Wow, it's really interesting you say that because I've been noticing that in the past 2 or 3 months. Like the word gets there eventually. I was a little worried of like, oh, I've got early onset dementia. Like, no, probably not, because I eventually find the word, but it takes a little bit longer than I want it to. But I'm also, I'll be 60 next year. So it's hard to.
You will? Stop it.
I know,
That's
it's weird.
crazy.
I know, it's crazy. Another reason that I think, and HER2 positive can be much more aggressive than the estrogen progesterone positive, but I think for me, one of the fears would be if I was on the hormone blocker pill for a number of years, what if I lose my health insurance?
Right.
Whereas, I'm not planning on losing health insurance, but I have a fantasy of doing another Doctors Without Borders thing, maybe in a year or so.
Sure.
Which would require leaving my current job. Now, when you work with Doctors Without Borders, they give you insurance and they cover you a little bit when you get back, but not forever.
Right. Right.
And then you've got that whole like pre-existing condition nonsense to deal with.
Right. That's a whole new world thinking about that.
Yeah. I
look at healthcare in a whole different light.
Yeah. No, me too. No, it was really interesting actually this past week at work. I have to be careful not to bust his identity too much, but a lovely new patient with an unfortunate stage 4. And obviously it's not not obviously, but it's not breast cancer.
Right.
And very active. He's been a mountaineer for many, many years. And he was starting to feel some neuropathy only after one treatment. So I went and talked to the nurse practitioners who run the infusion center. And I said to them, look, this guy needs cryotherapy. Like, talk about quality of life. Mountaineering is his thing. And if he can't walk properly and he's scheduled for 8 treatments, his life is going to be ruined.
Yeah.
And this is county hospital, it's only Medicare, Medi-Cal. And they said, we don't do that here. And I was just horrified. And I said, how much is ice? Like, really?
Right. What's his address? I'll send him my mittens.
Yeah, I was going to give him mine.
Yeah.
And she said, well, he has to do it all himself and nobody can help. And I said, wait a minute. And then I started to think about it because, as I've mentioned, my clinic office is in the infusion center. I have never seen any women in that infusion center with cold caps.
Oh.
And it's the curse of poverty again. And it really, it went back to how unbelievably fortunate I feel to have got the treatment at UCSF that I did.
Yeah.
And if your nurses aren't bringing it up to you at your appointments, you don't know that you could, I didn't pay for the hair thing all by myself. Like my family chipped in to help me do it.
Right.
And,
yeah.
If somebody doesn't explain what options you have to help with quality of life and side effects, you don't know.
No.
I mean, unless you go down every Google rabbit hole there is, but.
Right. But how has work been? Have you found there's any triggers? Have you found like anything that has been super emotional for you?
So I've caught myself a few times. I like almost all of my patients, but I had a lovely woman, new patient about 2 and a bit weeks ago with unfortunately a pancreatic cancer, which anybody who knows anything about cancer knows that that's not a good diagnosis. She's also young. She's in her early 40s. She's doing it as a single woman, really relying on a female friends community. And there was something about her that reminded me of me. And then I do find myself occasionally over-identifying, but just internally, like I've been very careful about not externalizing it. Right. But a patient last week who was talking about how all food tasted the same and he didn't want to eat it. And I'm sitting there nodding like a
bobblehead.
A bobblehead. I absolutely know. And I think in all the months since I've been back at work, I've only disclosed a couple of times. One was actually hilarious. It was a patient who walked in. She's like, God, you're skinny. What cancer do you have? I'm like, well, funny you should mention that. And then another patient really talking about neuropathy. And the patient I mentioned earlier was just like, no, you need to like get some ice on those hands and feet when you're getting your chemo because, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but no, it has been strange. Although I finished chemo in June, going in for the hormone blocker every 3 weeks, which is what I was doing for chemo, often sitting in the same chairs that I sat in when I was going through chemo. It's a little triggering going back there all the time. So yeah, the thought of working just in the breast cancer clinic was like, what was I thinking?
Do you ever leave there and expect to feel some of the same way that you felt?
Yes.
After chemo?
Yeah. And I often have nausea even just sitting there.
I can imagine that it's a little psychosomatic with that.
And it's the same nurses who gave me the chemo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whole new level. So you're talking about you've gained a little bit of weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to trigger anything, but like, how do you feel you're healing, both physically and emotionally? I think that one of the last times, maybe a couple times ago that we talked, you were talking about going and seeing an oncology.
Oh, that's right. The psycho-oncologist or something.
Yeah, when I texted you, I think I called him the onco shrink.
Right, the onco shrink. So I did. So I forget when I saw the onco shrink. Maybe it was a couple of weeks ago. And I said to her, like, I could have used you 8 months ago. Like, it feels a little strange coming in at this point. But they were just so backed up. She couldn't see me any sooner. So it didn't feel like I was setting up a therapeutic relationship with her because she doesn't want to talk about my divorce and my struggles with new relationships. And like, that's not what she's there for. But I think it could have been helpful from the beginning. I mean, I was seeing a therapist at the beginning sort of to help me pick myself up from the divorce and the early diagnosis. But she was very clear at the beginning, and maybe she had some of her own, issues that were a little similar, but she basically said, I'm not comfortable with having a client who's going through cancer, which was very honest. It was a little sad, but I had to respect that. But it's also, it's outrageously expensive. It's really hard to.
It's hard. It's really hard to find somebody. And especially after the pandemic, to find somebody who's available within a month or 2 or 4.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the whole Zoom therapy thing didn't quite work for me. I don't know.
But so physically, you're gaining some weight.
I'm gaining some weight. I think I'm getting close to between 85 and 90% of myself. I'm still more tired. Last night I'm about to sound like a baby. It wasn't really cold, but it was San Francisco cold.
I know.
And I could not get the house warm. And I just went to bed at about 7:30 and lay in bed with the pets and listened to the radio. And, I probably wouldn't have done that a year or so ago. But there's also a way of giving myself permission to really luxuriate in some self-care stuff.
Well, it's hibernation season too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was sort of 43 degrees, which is cold for San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I'm in a big drafty Victorian that I just could not get the heat above 60 degrees. I was like, this is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of the physical side. I think emotionally, I don't know if I'll ever wake up one day and the whole thing will hit me and I'll have to go. I feel pretty pragmatic about the whole thing in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely been a little bit of, I think I've talked about this, so kind of a sort of a medical curiosity. I've gone through the regimens that I see my patients go through.
Right.
I've taken a lot of the drugs that I've prescribed to other people. And now I know, I kind of know that Zofran doesn't really work for chemo, or it definitely didn't work for me. And so I find myself really pushing patients to advocate for themselves around symptom management. It's you do not have to put up with X, Y, and Z. Nausea, don't accept that you're puking and feeling like crap the whole time. There's other drugs.
Right.
And really, a lot of people approach chemo understandably expecting it to be not a walk in the park, but it doesn't have to be an out and out nightmare. If there's a message to people out there in podcast world, really advocate for yourself around symptom management when you're going through chemo. It's not easy, but it doesn't have to be horrible.
Okay, so on the personal front, is your divorce final?
It is. It was finalized on Halloween.
Okay.
I know, which is such a perfect date. I have paid my ex off for the house, so it's now 100% mine, which is a little scary because I'm not a handy person at all. So things...
when things break, they stay broken.
The sink was blocked in one of the upstairs bathrooms, and I got some Mr. Plumber or Drano or whatever it's called, poured it down, didn't fix it. I was like, guess I'll just have to sell the house then. That's it.
I've got a bum drain. So
I know. But no, it's nice. Like I was saying before we really started recording, my roommate's going to be moving out at the end of December. And I'm looking forward to having the house to myself for a while. I will need another housemate, but just having it to myself and making some changes. And the plan, I get a little tiny bit of time off over the holidays. So I want to do a decluttering. I've lived in the house for 25 years, so stuff accumulates.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a couple of drawers in my bedroom that have my mittens and all the beanies that I thought I was going to wear before I decided to do the cold caps and, that kind of frumpy, ugly gown they gave me through radiation. And I feel strangely attached to them.
I know. It's so weird. Yeah.
And it was interesting. I was talking, this same friend that I was talking to just before you and I got on tonight, she didn't realize that I still had my port. And I was like, yeah, I still have the port. And that's probably end of March, the port will come out. And more and more things are just being taken away that were very much identified with cancer and with my treatment. And I ran across the other day on my bookshelf, the Susan Love, is it Susan Love? Somebody Love.
Oh, the
breast cancer something book, the one that everybody buys.
Everybody has, yeah. And
I didn't read it. I barely looked at it. I must confess. So if anybody out there wants it, let me know. You can have it. And I've got another one called something like Just Get Me Through This, which was actually a more useful book.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah. And in a way, what I've loved about doing this podcast is every now and then I'll pick an episode and I'll listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like my own personal journey and my journal. And it just reminds me how far I've come.
Yes. Yes. And you have,
Yeah.
I mean, you're a different person.
Yeah. I was listening to the episode just before my surgery. I was such a wreck before surgery and I sailed through it. There was nothing to it. It's been a funny experience.
Okay, I'm going to confess. You're going to be like, girl, I had no idea you were this girl. This messed up. I've saved every hospital bracelet.
Oh, wow.
From the very first chemo, from the very first everything. I mean, I have one from the other day when I had the ultrasound done. And I'm still convinced I'm going to make flowers out of them. I was going to make flowers and put a thing in the middle. And I don't know why. It's not like it was a great time, but it's really a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I imagine being in the military or even the stuff that you do, in Malawi, going through, and it's hell and it's traumatic. And why would you want to see those things? Right.
Right.
But I don't know. It's like I've gone back and listened. And I think we said something in one of the later podcasts, later in season 1. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I've got this. Like, there's a journey and I'm going to be fine and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, how annoying were you? It was like, how annoying and naive. But you know what? At the same time, I think I had to tell myself that.
Right.
So I could get through it.
So I was just having a strange thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put you on the spot first and then I'll do my confession. If somebody said you can go back 3 years and you don't have to have cancer.
Okay.
Would you choose not to have it?
That's really tough. Oh, I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a gift. You are a gift,
right.
But cancer is not a gift.
Right. And I hate to take us into the Pollyanna realm because neither of us, well, you've been accused of being a little more Pollyanna than I have, but I feel like it's opened, and I'm about to sound really Californian, and I'm from a small village in the north of England, so forgive me, but I feel like it's opened my heart in a way that I'm thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there was trauma, and yes, it's going to be with me forever, and I'll always be terrified, but there's a way that it's made me softer, I think.
Yes. I think it's so interesting how something can make you softer and stronger, and tougher at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about the challenges of doing this alone. I mean, as a single woman, and other people give me a lot of credit for it that I don't often take, because I'm like, no, it was fine, but you and I are badass women.
Right?
Yeah.
I was on this retreat. It was a meditation retreat. And there were some people from Australia that were there, that were the mentors of my meditation teacher. And it was wonderful. But one of the people who was there I would listen to his music when I would go to chemo. And he was there in person playing these songs.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I went up to him and I said, Maitreya, I just have to tell you, and I got tears in my eyes. I said, I hadn't met you, but every day when I went to chemo, every week, I had a playlist that gave me courage to go. And I said, I am so thankful for those, and to have you here playing them when I'm recovered from cancer. You were with me through this journey. And thank you for healing me with your songs. And he kind of looked down and he said, you've got so much courage. And I skirted the compliment because I was so uncomfortable with someone who I think so much of as a person, as a musician, as a healer. I was like, how could this person who makes such a difference in so many people's lives be telling me had so much courage?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it and I was like, because you do.
Yeah.
To answer your question, now that I'm on the kind of other side and knowing that even I picking up the mic or the Zoom just so that I didn't have to tell my story to my friends and family over and over, and then finding out it helped people, I would want those people to still be helped.
Yeah. I mean, I remember how much finding season 1 of the podcast, your story, how much it helped me. I mean, to sort of go back to, what was it, almost a year ago?
Yeah.
My story of having the 2-week dark night of the soul when I'm waiting to find out what stage I am, spending the weekend in bed, Googling breast cancer podcasts and finding your story and listening to all the episodes in one sitting. I mean, I didn't stop. So, yeah, I mean, I hope this has been as useful to other people as you were to me.
Thank you for listening to Breast Cancer Stories. To continue telling this story and helping others, we need your help. All podcasts require resources, and we have a team of people who produce it. There's costs involved, and it takes time.
If you believe in what we're doing and have the means to support the show, you can make a one-time donation, or you can set up a recurring donation in any amount through the PayPal link on our website at breastcancerstoriespodcast.com/donate.
To get the key takeaways from each episode, links to anything we've talked about, and promo codes or giveaways from our partners, sign up for our email newsletter.
You'll get notes and thoughts from me related to each episode and links to the most useful resources for all the breast cancer things. So if you have chemo brain, you'll be able to just go read your email, find anything we talked about on the podcast without having to remember it.
The link to sign up is in your show notes and on the newsletter page at breastcancerstoriespodcast.com.
We promise not to annoy you with too many emails.
Thanks for listening to Breast Cancer Stories. If you're facing a breast cancer diagnosis and you want to tell your story on the podcast, send an email to hello@theaxis.io. I'm Eva Shea, your host and executive producer. Production support for the show comes from Mary Ellen Clarkson, and our engineer is Daniel Cruiser. Breast Cancer Stories is a production of The Axis, THEAXIS.io.